I didn't notice when it started. That's the scary part. There was no screaming, no insults, no obvious red flags. If anything, he was calm. Too calm. He would look at me with this soft expression and say things like, "I just want what's best for you." And somehow, that sentence made me question everything about myself. At first, it felt like protection. He didn't like some of my friends. He said they were bad energy. He didn't like the way I dressed sometimes. He said people looked at me too much. He didn't like when I stayed out late. He said the world wasn't safe. And every time he said it gently, like concern, like love. So I adjusted. I stopped wearing certain clothes. I stopped answering some messages. I stopped going out as much. I told myself it was normal. Relationships require compromise, right? That's what I thought. That's what I kept repeating in my head. But then something strange started happening. I began apologizing for things I didn't understand. He would go quiet, withdraw, not angry, just distant. And that silence felt heavier than any scream. I would ask, "Are you okay?" He would sigh and say, "It's nothing." But it was never nothing. Hours later, I would be the one saying, "Sorry. Sorry for my tone. Sorry for the way I looked at him. Sorry for making him feel insecure. Sorry for things I didn't even remember doing." And slowly, I started monitoring myself. Before speaking, I would calculate. Before laughing, I would check his face. Before posting anything, I would ask myself if it would upset him. I didn't realize it then, but I was no longer living. I was performing. He never told me directly what to do. That's what made it brilliant. He planted doubt, small seeds, and I watered them. "You're too sensitive. Are you sure that's what happened? I think you misunderstood. You always exaggerate, always calm, always rational, always composed. So if there was a problem, it had to be me." I remember one specific night. We were at dinner with friends. I told a story. Everyone laughed, even him. But on the way home, the silence returned. I felt it immediately, that shift in the air. "What's wrong?" I asked. He shrugged. "Nothing." I pushed. I always pushed. Finally, he said, "I just didn't like how you made me look." My stomach dropped. I was just telling a story. It felt disrespectful. And there it was again. That word, disrespectful. I replayed the story in my head 100 times that night. I couldn't sleep. Was I disrespectful? Did I cross a line? Was I embarrassing? The next morning, I apologized. Not because I believed I was wrong, but because I couldn't handle the distance. That's when it happened. The shift. The reprogramming. I stopped trusting my memory. If I felt hurt, I questioned it. If I felt uncomfortable, I minimized it. If something didn't sit right, I told myself I was overreacting. He never broke me loudly. He edited me quietly. And the worst part? I defended him. When my friend once asked, "Are you okay? You seem different," I laughed. I said, "No, I'm just growing. I'm maturing." I wasn't maturing. I was shrinking. Piece by piece. Until one day, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. I used to be loud, spontaneous, opinionated. Now I was careful, measured, filtered. I thought love was supposed to make you better, but I didn't feel better. I felt smaller. The moment that woke me up wasn't dramatic. There was no huge fight, no betrayal, just a sentence. We were arguing softly about something stupid, and he said, very calmly, "You're not the person you used to be." And for the first time, I agreed, but not in the way he meant. I wasn't the person I used to be, because I had slowly erased her to make him comfortable. That realization hit like cold water. I started noticing patterns. How every conflict ended with me apologizing. How every insecurity became my responsibility. How every boundary I tried to set somehow turned into me being difficult. It wasn't love. It was control without fingerprints. The hardest part wasn't leaving. The hardest part was trusting my own mind again. After we ended, I would still question myself, still feel guilty, still hear his calm voice in my head saying, "You're overreacting." It took months to understand something powerful. If someone makes you doubt your reality consistently, that's not love. That's erosion. And erosion doesn't happen in one storm. It happens slowly, quietly, until there's nothing solid left. I didn't leave because he yelled. I didn't leave because he cheated. I didn't leave because he hit me. I left because I couldn't hear my own thoughts anymore. And the day I chose myself, the silence felt different. Not heavy. Peaceful. Now when I laugh, I don't check anyone's face. When I speak, I don't rehearse it first. When I feel something, I trust it. He didn't break me. He reprogrammed me. And I had to rewrite myself from scratch. If you've ever felt smaller in a relationship, if you've ever apologized just to keep the peace, if you've ever doubted your own memory, maybe you weren't crazy. Maybe you were being edited. And maybe it's time to take your voice back.